Yeah.
I was going to say what Nick talked about Facebook, that's a good mechanism to put in place to hold people accountable for their comments. Because, you know, with people being anonymous, they don't feel obligated to. So I think that's
and we do have Facebook commenting as well. There's a whole debate in the industry about whether or not all comments should be Facebook. I was at the American Society of News Editors conference last week, and there was a vibrant debate about this. The trade-off is that you may lose a significant portion of your commenting audience, and some of the beneficial comments could also be sort of lost in that translation. And so there's a debate about how to do it. I'm surprised one of the questions that hasn't come up here is about paywalls. Nobody has really raised the question about whether or not that's an appropriate business model, though I don't necessarily have a good answer for that. I would say that I think we're watching and waiting. But one of the benefits of the paywall model, and we will see how this plays out with the New York Times, is when you go in to sort of give your credit card information to sign up to get the digital version of the Times, you know, more likely than not, people are going to be using their true identity to do that. And then that's the same registration that you have when it shifts over to the comments. And so there is some thinking that paywalls in and of themselves may also lead to more sort of civilized discussion on the comment side. But some newspapers have taken their comments off the stories completely, and you have to move over to specific Facebook pages in order to be able to comment on them. So I think the whole commenting world in the newspaper industry, at least, is continuing to evolve, and every political season brings even more frenzied response to try to rein it in.
And we've found that, you know, if on-air personalities or reporters are starting to comment on those stories, it provides more, people kind of jump on that and they get more interactive. So we have found that when someone on air or somebody who's doing our newscast or something, they jump in and give their opinion on it or some facts, people kind of jump on that, and it provides more people an opportunity to voice their opinion, and they like interacting. It's always good to keep interacting.
But to you use politics as an example when you said, how do you know ideology isn't a variable? The comments that may agree or disagree with a political decision that's out there generally aren't the comments that come down. We have an ethics policy that has some guidelines about what's acceptable, and so if the comments are attacking someone personally, then that would be a reason to take them down. If there is profanity, that would be a reason to take them down. If they're racially charged, that would be a reason to take them down. And so the people whose job it is to monitor the comments are well versed in what's on that list. And if something is clearly on the list, then it won't necessarily get many layers of scrutiny. If something's kind of borderline, then we end up having a conversation about it.
All right, in the back.
I had just a question about some more widespread convergence. One thing that's happened in more niche areas of journalism, it used to be the domain of magazines, things like technology. We've seen blogs essentially, like Slashdot is a good example, or Engadget, that work as sort of news aggregators, both providing reporting and also linking to various sites, whether this be Wall Street Journal, Associated Press, whatever, and sort of acting as centralized hubs linking out. Do you see this happening more in mainstream journalism, or is this going to stay niche?
Yeah, actually, that we emphasize that more and more with our stories. We encourage aggregation, links to other stories, to other sources. It seems, at first it seemed kind of going against everything you wanted to do, keep people on your site. But I think exactly what you said, you know, we hope to become a hub for Cleveland news and sometimes, you know, in regional news. And so it's encouraged at the Plain Dealer.
And then I would just add to that the Plain Dealer is part of a larger company called Advanced Publications. and Advanced Internet is an extension of that company as well. And there are a number of priority areas for Advanced Internet, and so the Plain Dealer is actually Advanced Internet's center of excellence in aggregation, where we are the model for the other newspapers in our chain on aggregation. And another one is the Center of Excellence for Posting, and they are really sort of setting the standard for, volume and quality in terms of the number of posts that papers are putting up. And so I think that in recent years, in coming years, you'll see more rather than less aggregation for just the reasons that Dale described.
All right, any other questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like you to speak a bit more about what should, if you want to just say, these are the three things that as students in general, somebody who's going to apply in the market for jobs should be looking at. These are the top three skills. We look at when we look at the application.
I think it's three. Three is a hard number to
Right. Well, okay, I'll just speak from the photo point of view. If someone sends us a portfolio, the still portfolio is number one. Being able to produce multimedia is number two, and but a very close number two, and video experience for us. So if you have experience across those three things, being able to, actually more and more two things now. It's have a good still photography portfolio as well as some competence in video, and not being on air, but being able to shoot and produce a video.
And I would say being able to gather a group of facts and turn them into a fair, balanced, accurate, understandable story. And so you'd be surprised that newspapers don't do this as much because we don't do as much hiring as we used to, but oftentimes we'll give young journalists a sheet with 25 facts on it of an incident that happened somewhere in the world, and give them a sort of finite time frame to turn those facts into a meaningful, accurate story, and they oftentimes can't do it. So I think being able to have some basic sort of reporting skills, understanding of information, and being able to turn that information around into a solid written form is the sort of minimal standard.
For us in broadcast, same thing. We just turn it into video, but the exact same thing. Be able to tell a great story. Number two, our business is moving so forward technology, so you need to know how to edit as well. Come in the door knowing how to edit. A big source is Avid, because that's Mac driven. So also know how to, if you can, also know how to shoot and edit and write your own stuff. Writing is so important. People think just because you're on TV, you don't need the ability to write. Let me tell you, it separates the people who get the job from those who don't, even as a student. And since we are image driven, when you send your tapes or on your website, do your best not to look like a student. It's a cliche, but dress for the job you want, not where you are. So when you have your website and when you get your website that you're going to send the news director, already appear and have the image and the look of the reporter you want to be for that station. Different regions have different looks. California, hair's a lot longer if you're going out there. Some different areas, Midwest, short hair, the bob. It sounds funny, but when you look at the images and the images of the on-air reporters and anchors in different regions of the city, the different regions of the United States, they have different looks. So prepare for that. And then I cannot emphasize enough interviewing skills. I don't care if you practice interviewing with your classmates, your roommates, whoever. So many intelligent 4.0 students come in and they can't even sell themselves to our news directors. They can't tell our news directors or explain to them how interesting they are. In other words, they can't tell an interesting story about who they are and why they want to do this job. So a news director will figure, well, if you can't sell me and tell me a story about yourself in an interesting way that compels me, if you have 25 facts, how can you tell an interesting, compelling story with 25 facts? And you know yourself. So definitely have great interviewing skills in addition to what everybody else says. And you need to be a one-stop. When they say, can you edit? Yes. Can you shoot? Yes. And you can go on air? Yes. You need to have all that in your arsenal. Those are just tools, but they're very important tools.
And I think you also need to be able to demonstrate some basic reporting skills. Like oftentimes a young person will interview me and they'll smile and say, and they haven't written anything down. And I'm like, what are you supposed to do with this information afterward? If there's a paper that's supposed to come on the other end of this, do you think you should have taken a few notes? So maybe you can have some information to refer back to. And, you know, Kenny mentioned interviewing in terms of selling yourself. I also think interviewing, you know, in a way that helps you gather information to be able to tell a story is critically important, which is why I give the example of having been interviewed without the person on the other end actually writing anything down. I don't know if you all want to add.
The only other thing that I would want to add, and just because my football site, nationalfootballauthority.com, is football specific, the people that I look for need to have a wide variety of knowledge, because I'm not only going to ask you to cover one team, I'm going to ask you to cover multiple teams. So you need to be a sports fan, especially for football.
And if you want to cover local news, you need to have some understanding of how government works. I mean, too often young people, and this may not be as true anymore, but have sort of checked out of, you know, the way in which democracy evolves. And so it's hard to take them seriously as candidates on the hard news side because, you know, they're not quite sure who the mayor is or what the critical issues are in the community that they are expressing an interest in working. And so, you know, I think a basic understanding of public affairs and the critical current events happening in your community also would be a baseline.
And to piggyback on that, I'll give you a little insight. Research the city you're going to interview in and the company you're going to interview with. One of the big questions our news director asks when she's interviewing is, if we were to give you a story, a lead story today, what would it be and how would you approach it? And if you don't know what's going on in that city or what's the top 10 stories that station or newspaper has done in the past 10 days, that tells them right there your interviewing skills, your research skills are just not up to speed. So always research the place you're going to before you go there. Sounds ridiculous, but it can be a deal breaker.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I want to thank our panelists for coming today. Thank you all for joining us, and special thanks to Leona Johnson, who we would not have been here today without.